You turn off the lights. The room becomes quiet. Outside, the world looks exactly the same. But the real answer is far stranger. For almost every night of human history, darkness wasn't the end of the day. It was the beginning of a completely different world. A world with different rules, different dangers, different behaviors. If you stepped outside 50,000 years ago after sunset, your phone wouldn't exist. Your house wouldn't exist. Even the idea of a safe night wouldn't exist. The darkness around you wouldn't simply hide the world. It would replace it. The familiar landscape would disappear into blackness while your brain suddenly became your most important survival tool. Every sound mattered. Every shadow mattered. Every second mattered. So what did your ancestors actually do once the sun disappeared? Did they sleep? Not exactly. Modern humans often imagine ancient people crawling into caves and sleeping for 8 uninterrupted hours. But evidence suggests something much more surprising. Night was active. It was social. It was strategic. And sometimes, it was terrifying. For more than 95% of human history, there were no cities glowing with electric lights, no street lamps, no flashlights, no locked doors. When the sun vanished, humans entered the territory of creatures that were built for darkness. Lions, hyenas, leopards, wolves, animals whose eyes could see far better than yours ever could. Suddenly, humans were no longer the hunters. They became the vulnerable ones. Anthropologist Richard Wrangham argues that controlling fire changed human evolution forever, not only because it cooked food, but because it transformed the night itself. A small fire didn't just produce warmth. It created something much more valuable, a circle of safety. Beyond that circle, the darkness belonged to something else. Imagine sitting beside that fire. You hear leaves moving somewhere beyond the light. You can't see anything, only darkness. Was it the wind? Or was something watching you? The terrifying part was that you usually couldn't know. Your ancestors learned a simple rule. If something might be dangerous, treat it as dangerous. That tiny habit kept generations alive. And thousands of years later, your brain still follows the same rule. That is why a jacket hanging on a chair can suddenly look like a person at 2 a.m. Not because your brain is broken, because your brain is ancient. And the strangest part, the night wasn't only about surviving, it quietly changed the way humans talked, bonded, remembered stories, and even built civilization itself. Because after sunset, something happened around those fires that would shape every generation that came after. The fire did more than keep predators away. It changed human minds. During the day, survival demanded movement. You searched for food, you watched for danger, you made quick decisions. But at night, everything slowed down. People gathered close together. The flames became the center of the world. Faces glowed in the light. The darkness erased everything beyond it. For the first time all day, people had time to simply talk. Anthropologist Polly Wiesner studied modern hunter-gatherer groups in southern Africa and discovered something remarkable. During daylight hours, conversations were mostly practical. Where to hunt, where to gather food, who needed help. But after sunset, everything changed. Stories appeared. People spoke about ancestors, dreams, spirits, heroes, the future, the past. Night transformed survival into imagination. Think about your own life. The deepest conversations rarely happen at noon. They happen late at night, around a dinner table, around a campfire, or while staring into the darkness. That pattern may be tens of thousands of years old. Your ancestors didn't invent storytelling because they were bored. Stories became survival technology. Imagine a child sitting beside the fire. An elder begins speaking, not from a book, not from memory alone, but from experience. He tells the story of a river where crocodiles hide beneath calm water. Another story warns about poisonous berries that look sweet. Another explains why nobody should travel alone after sunset. To the child, they sound like entertaining stories. But hidden inside every story is information that might one day save a life. Long before schools existed, stories became classrooms. Long before writing existed, the human brain became a living library. Psychologist Jerome Bruner argued that humans naturally understand the world through stories rather than isolated facts. A story is easier to remember, easier to repeat, and far more difficult to forget. That may explain why every civilization on Earth developed myths and legends, not simply to entertain, but to preserve knowledge across generations. Around those ancient fires, parents weren't just raising children, they were programming future survivors. Every frightening tale, every warning, every legend about creatures hiding beyond the light made the next generation just a little more careful. But something even stranger was happening. While the fire protected people physically, the darkness surrounding it was quietly changing the human brain itself. Because every flickering shadow, every mysterious sound, forced your ancestors to imagine things they couldn't see, and that single ability, to imagine the invisible, may have become one of humanity's greatest evolutionary superpowers. The darkness also changed the way your brain thinks, not just what it sees. Think about the last time you heard a strange sound in the middle of the night. Your heart probably reacted first. Your logic arrived second. That isn't a flaw. It's ancient programming. Deep inside your brain is a small structure called the amygdala. Think of it as your emergency alarm. It doesn't wait for proof. It reacts to possibility. Neuroscientist Joseph Ledoux spent decades studying this system. His research showed that your brain has a shortcut, a fast pathway. Before your conscious mind has time to ask, "What was that?" your body is already preparing to survive. 5,000 generations ago, that shortcut could mean the difference between life and death. Imagine hearing footsteps outside the circle of fire. If you waited until you were completely certain, it might already be too late. So evolution favored people who reacted first and investigated later. That ancient rule still lives inside you. This is why an empty hallway feels different at midnight than it does at noon. The hallway hasn't changed. Your brain has. Darkness removes information. And when information disappears, your imagination begins filling the gaps. Neuroscientist Anil Seth describes perception in a fascinating way. Your brain is not a camera. It is a prediction machine. Every second, it guesses what the world looks like. Then it compares those guesses with the information coming from your eyes and ears. During the day, those guesses are usually accurate. There is plenty of information. At night, the information almost disappears. The guesses become louder. That shadow in the corner might become a person. A tree branch becomes a hand. A coat hanging on a door becomes someone silently watching. You are not seeing ghosts. You are watching your brain solve a puzzle with missing pieces. And sometimes, it chooses the safest answer instead of the correct one. Because throughout human history, a false alarm was cheaper than a fatal mistake. But the night didn't only create fear. It created curiosity. Once people felt safe around the fire, they looked upward. For the first time all day, there was almost nothing to distract them. No bright cities, no glowing screens, only thousands of stars stretching across the sky. Those stars became humanity's first map, the first calendar, the first clock. Long before written history, people noticed patterns. Certain stars appeared before winter. Others returned before animals migrated. The night sky slowly became a survival guide. Without realizing it, your ancestors were becoming the world's first astronomers. And one simple question changed everything. What are those lights above us? That question would eventually lead to science itself. Every night, without realizing it, your ancestors looked up. Not because they were astronomers, because there was nothing else to see. Above them stretched thousands of stars. No light pollution, no skyscrapers, no glowing billboards. Just the largest classroom humanity has ever known. At first, those lights were mysterious. Then patterns began to appear. One group of stars always returned before winter. Another appeared when certain animals migrated. The moon changed shape in a rhythm no one could control. Little by little, the sky became a calendar, a compass, a clock. Anthropologists believe these observations helped humans predict seasons, plan journeys, and remember time long before writing existed. In other words, civilization may have begun by simply looking up after sunset. But the night offered something even more valuable: silence. For most of the day, your ancestors reacted. At night, they reflected. Questions that had no immediate survival value suddenly became possible. Who are we? Where did the stars come from? What happens after death? Why does the moon change? Those questions didn't fill empty stomachs, but they filled curious minds. Some historians believe philosophy, religion, and science all share the same birthplace: a circle of people sitting around a fire, staring into the darkness. The greatest ideas in human history may have started with people who had nothing to look at except flames and the sky. Today, your nights look completely different. You switch on a lamp, you scroll through your phone, you watch another episode. Artificial light has pushed back the darkness, but your brain hasn't changed nearly as fast as your technology has. Evolution works slowly. Electricity arrived yesterday. Your ancient brain arrived hundreds of thousands of years ago. That is why silence can still feel uncomfortable. Why unexpected sounds wake you instantly. Why shadows still catch your attention. Why your imagination becomes stronger after sunset. You aren't experiencing a bug. You're experiencing history. The same brain that once listened for predators now worries about tomorrow's meeting. The same imagination that once guessed what moved beyond the fire now imagines worst-case scenarios before an important decision. Your world changed. Your brain simply adapted those ancient survival tools to modern problems. So, what did ancient humans really do at night? They survived. They told stories. They raised children. They watched the stars. They imagined invisible dangers. They passed knowledge from one generation to the next. And without realizing it, they built the foundations of civilization. Tonight, when you turn off the lights, the room will become darker. Your imagination may become louder. A shadow might briefly look like something it isn't, but the real answer is far stranger. For a few quiet moments, you aren't just standing in your bedroom. You're experiencing the same ancient night that shaped the human mind itself.